Hi, I'm Bill from CJ Pony Parts. For years, lowering springs and exhaust have been the two most popular modifications Mustang owners have made, and owners of the 2015 and up Mustangs are no different. That's why we've done a lot of exhaust videos and a lot of spring videos to give you a lot of different options. The Ford Racing Street Springs in front of me are one of the more popular lowering springs because they drop the car around an inch, which gives you a nice stance, but the aggressive rate provides really good ride quality, and they're also very easy to align. Now, last time we installed these, we put them on a GT convertible, which is the heaviest Mustang available. A lot of you have asked how they would fit the V6 and the EcoBoost, so today we're going to install these on this 2015 V6 Fastback. These Ford Racing street lowering springs from Ford Performance will be a direct replacement for the factory spring on all 2015 through 2017 V6 GTs and EcoBoost Mustangs. They are progressive rate springs, which will add a nice ride quality but also increase performance and get rid of a lot of the body roll problem with these cars. The kits can include both front and rear springs as well as new bump stops and work with stock or aftermarket shocks and struts. For this installation, let a lift and a pole jack or a jack and jack stands, 3/8 ratchet, 13mm socket, 14mm socket, 15mm socket, 1/2-inch impact or ratchet, 18mm socket, 21mm socket, 24mm socket, short extension, torque wrench, 17mm wrench, panel removal tool, hammer, and a spring compressor. Begin the installation by getting the car off the ground and removing the wheels. Then we're going to go into the hood. These are the 3 nuts and bolts here for the strut. We're going to remove 2 of them, leave the 3rd one attached, but leave it loose. And I can move on to the wheel well. We'll start down here by separating the strut from the sway bar. Put a wrench on the back here and remove the nut from the front. The sway bar disconnected. Now remove the ABS line. It's held on by plastic clips, small screwdriver or panel removal tool. Get up in there and pop those off. To get the strut out, we have to remove the 2 strut bolts from the spindle, but to get to the back here, we're going to remove the brake caliper first to give us more room, possibly even take off the rotor depending on how much space we need. And put the caliper safely out of the way. Okay, now to separate the spindle from the strut, we have to remove these nuts. The bolts are splined so they won't turn. What you want to do, just loosen them out the end for now. I'll show you why in a second. Now, like I mentioned before, the bolts are splined. To get them out, what you want to do is get the nut on the end so we can actually hit the nut with a hammer and not mushroom the end of the bolt. Okay, now we can remove the nuts and remove the bolts. All right, to get the strut off, just grab it, lift it up. The nut that we left loose up top here. Thread that off and remove the assembly. Once the strut assembly is out of the car, we have to remove the spring from the strut. To do that, you got to compress the spring, so remove the nut up top. Now we can remove the strut mount and the nut. Here you see a quick comparison. Here's our Ford Performance spring versus our stock spring. Obviously you can see it is much lower, but retains the same shape. Now we're going to compress our Ford Performance spring. You want to make sure you line the spring up properly. There's a seat in the bottom here you want to make sure it sits in. With the nut installed, now we can back off our compressor. And it's ready to go back in the car. You want to make sure you got the one stud facing out, and we're going to put our strut back up into place. And just loosely put the nuts on by hand. And we can reconnect the spindle to our strut. Just get those started. We can tighten the nut, it'll pull the spline all the way through. And once the nuts are tight, you'll want to torque them to 184 foot-pound. Then you put our rotor back on and put our caliper back on. Make sure when you go to put the caliper back on, make sure your sway bar end link here is on top of the hose. If it's underneath the hose, you have to remove the caliper to get it back up into place, so it'll go back in the strut. And we can reinstall the sway bar. And once these are tight, caliper bracket bolts get torqued to 85 foot-pound. There we go, 85 on that, and then 85 up here as well. And the sway bar nut gets the same torque spec. And now we can reconnect the ABS clips. And the last step on this side to tighten these three nuts to 46 foot-pound. Okay, we'll repeat the process on the other side. Now we can move on to the rears. To remove the rear spring, we have to lower the cradle. So before we can do that, we're going to bolt the brake line here and the shock mount so everything can drop down. bolts per side that hold the cradle to the body. There's a front one here and there's another one in the back. Before we can release this though, we have to release these two small bolts so the whole bracket will come down. We're gonna put the pole jack into place here and support the cradle so we can lower it down. Make sure you do this before you touch these two bolts. You don't want it falling. We can lower down the jack to lower the cradle. You'll see the tension release on the spring as well. With tension off, you probably want to pull down the cradle a little bit, rock the spring outward. And remove it. Now put the factory isolator back on top of our new spring and put it up into place. There is a pocket in the lower control arm for the spring. You want to make sure it is in the pocket and touching the end like it's supposed to be. There we go. And again, make sure everything is seated. We'll jack it into place. Start with the front bolt. Just get this hand tight for now. And the same with the rear. We're gonna put the two little alignment bolts in next. And we're going to torque these bolts to 129 foot-pound. Before we put the shock back into place, we've got to swap out the bump stop. So remove the mount, pull the sleeve off. Simply push the old one out. Take our new shorter bump stop. Actually, a screwdriver works pretty well here. Just line it up, push it up into place. Everything tight, now we can safely remove our pole jack and keep it handy for the other side. I'll put the shock back into place. And repeat the process on the other side and your installation's finished. The Ford Performance Street Springs look great on our V6 Mustang. It doesn't lower quite as much as the GT convertible, but there's a weight difference, so it's not going to be quite as low. Overall, though, it gives us a nice drop. We'll probably settle a little bit more once we drive it. The installation is pretty straightforward. We'll take you around 2 hours. We'll be back on the road in no time.